My name is Naomi Carter Black American, and this is the story of how the man I married tried to put a price on my life. I am writing this in my own words because I need you to hear it the way I lived it, not the way some reporter or stranger might tell it. When I look back now, it feels like I was living in a movie I did not know I was in, smiling in the wrong scenes, trusting the wrong man, walking straight toward the water and thinking it was love. I live in a small brick house on the east side of Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States of America. The house is not big, not fancy, but it is mine. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, a little white porch with peeling paint, and a yard that always needs cutting. There is a crooked black mailbox at the front with our last name, Carter, written in fading white letters. I still remember the first day I held the keys in my hand. I had worked 10 long years at a community health clinic downtown to afford that house. The price was $320,000, which felt like a mountain to climb. Every month when I sent in that mortgage payment, I felt a small burst of pride, like I was putting another brick into the wall of my own future. I work as a medical assistant at the clinic. It is not a glamorous job, but it is honest work. I check patients in, take their blood pressure, draw their blood, calm down scared children, and smile at old women who like to talk about their aches and pains. On good weeks, I bring home about $800. When I pick up extra shifts, I can make around $1,200. That money pays for the mortgage, groceries, gas, and everything my little girl needs. Her name is Maya. She is 8 years old, loves purple, loves cartoons, and still climbs into my bed when she has bad dreams. When I watch her sleeping with her hand tucked under her cheek, I feel like every tired bone in my body is worth it. My husband's name is Darius Bennett. When we first met, I thought he was the answer to every prayer I had. He had this easy smile and a way of talking that made me feel like I was the only woman in the room. He opened doors for me, brought me flowers from the little corner shop, and left sticky notes on my mirror that said things like, "You're beautiful" or "We've got this, baby." He talked about our future in big, bright words. He said he wanted us to travel all over America, drive up the coast, visit big cities and small towns, and one day fly to Europe and walk by the River Thames in London. Back then, I believed every word that came out of his mouth. We got married in a small church on the west side of the city. It was not a big wedding, but it was full of laughter. My dress was simple, white lace that cost less than $400. Darius wore a gray suit he said he would wear again for job interviews. People pinned a few folded $20 bills into a wedding card for us, and we thought we were rich. For a while, life felt like that, simple, hopeful, and full of promise. When I got pregnant with Maya, we were staying in a tiny apartment. Darius promised that by the time our baby was old enough for school, she would have a yard to play in her own room with pink walls. That is how we ended up in the house in Atlanta. We signed the papers, smiled for the bank lady, and drove straight to the empty house with a box of pizza and 2 folding chairs. We did not have much furniture yet, but we had the keys and the dream. Darius carried me over the threshold like in the movies, and I laughed so hard I almost dropped the pizza. For a long time, I held onto that memory as proof that he loved me. I did not know then that he loved the idea of money much more. At first, Darius worked steady jobs. He drove delivery trucks, did warehouse shifts, and sometimes picked up side work fixing up old cars. Some months we were tight on money, but we managed. Then small things started to change. He began coming home late. At first he had excuses: traffic, overtime, stopping by a friend's house. I wanted to trust him, so I did. Then I caught a whiff of cheap perfume on his clothes one night, something floral and sharp that I did not own. When I asked about it, he laughed and said a lady at work gave everyone free samples. The answer sounded thin, but I pushed my doubt down and told myself not to be paranoid. After that, his phone became his best friend. He kept it face down on the table. He took it with him to the bathroom. If I walked into the room too quietly, I would see him swipe away a screen fast, then smile at me like nothing was wrong. He started snapping at me over small things, like how I folded the laundry or how I cooked the rice. Every small problem turned into a bigger fight. Underneath those fights, I noticed he always circled back to one topic: money. "Naomi, did you pay the insurance bill?" he would ask, over and over. If I said yes, he would ask if I was sure. If I said I had the receipt, he wanted to see it. At first, I thought he was just trying to be responsible. People change as they get older, I told myself, maybe he is just worried about our future. But it was more than that. His eyes did not look like a careful husband's eyes. They looked like a man counting numbers in his head. We had a life insurance policy in my name worth $900,000. He was the one who pushed for it. He said, if something ever happens to you, I need to be able to take care of Maya and keep the house. This is how rich families think ahead. The agent talked about security, safety, and planning for the worst. I signed the papers because, at the time, it felt like love. The idea that my life had a price tag written on it in black ink did not scare me then. It comforted me. Now, when I hear that number, I feel sick. There is one more thing you need to know about me. I am deeply, truly afraid of water. When I was 10 years old, I was visiting family in Cleveland, Ohio. My cousins and I went to a public pool. I could not swim, and everyone knew it. One of my cousins thought it would be funny to push me into the deep end. I remember the shock of the cold, the way the bright sky turned into a blur of blue and bubbles, and the way my chest burned as I flailed and sank. My aunt saw me go under and jumped in fully dressed. She dragged me out, coughing and shaking. Since that day, standing near deep water makes my throat tight. Even a calm lake can make my palms sweat. I told Darius that story many times. He held me and said, I'll always protect you. I'll never let you drown. He knew the depth of that fear. He knew every detail. Still, I trusted him. I told myself we were just going through a hard season, like storms that come and go. I picked up more shifts at the clinic. On weeks when Darius' money came in late, I stayed late at work, drawing blood until my back hurt and my feet throbbed. I cooked dinner, helped Maya with her spelling words, washed clothes, and tried to ignore the way Darius' smile no longer reached his eyes. When he stood in the kitchen and stared out the window, he looked far away, like he was living in some future I was not part of. Looking back now, I can see all the little signs I tried not to see. The way he watched me when we drove past lakes, asking if I ever thought about learning to swim. The way he joked about what if something happened to me and then asked if my policy was still active. The way he started calling the house a good asset instead of our home. At the time, I thought I was being loyal by staying, by working harder, by trusting him. I thought that was what a good wife was supposed to do. I did not know then that he was taking all my love, all my work, all my trust, and slowly turning it into a plan to kill me. The truth walked into my life on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day that should have faded into the background with all the other small quiet days. I was sitting at my desk in the clinic, going through a stack of lab bills. I remember one in front of me was for $65, and I was trying to match the number to the right patient file. The fluorescent lights hummed over my head, and the copy machine down the hall was whining like it always did. I was tired, but it was the normal kind of tired I had learned to live with. I had no idea that, in a few seconds, my whole world was going to tilt. My phone buzzed on the desk beside me. I glanced down and saw Maya's name on the screen. My first thought was that her school had let out early or she had forgotten her lunch. She almost never called me in the middle of the day, and that alone made my stomach tighten a little. I picked up the phone and pressed it to my ear, still half looking at the bill. "Hey baby," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "What's wrong?" Her voice came through small and shaky, like she was hiding in a corner. "Mama, are you alone?" she whispered. Something in the way she asked that question made the room go still around me. My hand stopped moving, and the paper under my fingers blurred. "Yes, baby," I said, my voice dropping. "I'm alone. You can talk to me. What happened?" "I heard Daddy talking to a lady," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "They were in the kitchen. They didn't know I was in the hallway." My heart started to pound. I straightened in my chair, suddenly wide awake. "What lady?" I asked, even though a cold guess was already forming in my mind. "Her name is Lena. Lena Moore," Maya said. "Daddy called her baby." The air left my lungs for a moment. I had seen that name before, lighting up Darius' phone late at night. When I asked him, he told me Lena was just a co-worker from Charlotte who needed help with her car. He said I was reading too much into it, that I was tired and stressed. I let it go because I wanted to believe him. Now, hearing that name in my daughter's scared little voice, I knew I had not been wrong at all. "Mama, they were talking about you," Maya went on. Her voice shook harder, like she was holding back tears. They said you're worth $900,000 if you die." For a moment, everything inside me froze. I stared at the wall in front of me, a pale, ugly color I had never really noticed before. The sounds of the clinic faded into the background. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice barely there. "They said they would get the house and all your money," she choked out. "Daddy said, once she's gone, we'll sell the house for at least $400,000 and move to the coast." The room started to spin slowly, like I was on a moving walkway, but my feet were nailed to the floor. I put my hand flat on the desk to steady myself. My husband, the man I had cooked for and prayed for and defended, had sat in our kitchen and talked about my death like a business deal. "What else did they say, baby?" I asked. I did not want to hear more, but I knew I had to. "They said they gonna take you to the lake this weekend," Maya whispered. "Daddy said he gonna help you get over your fear of the water." Lena laughed. She said, "As long as she goes under and doesn't come back up, we're set." I felt my heart stop, then slam back into motion so hard it hurt. My fear of deep water, the thing I had shared with Darius in my most vulnerable moments, had become part of a plan to get rid of me. They were going to use my terror like a tool. "Thank you for telling me," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm for her sake. "You are so brave, Maya. I am so proud of you." "Am I in trouble?" she asked, her voice breaking. "No, baby, you did the right thing," I said. "Now I need you to listen very carefully. I want you to go next door to Miss Gloria Reed's house. Don't say anything to Daddy. Just tell Miss Gloria you need to stay with her. I will call her and explain." "Can you do that for me?" "Yes, Mama," she whispered. "I love you," I said. "And I'm going to fix this. I promise." When I hung up, I sat there for maybe 5 long seconds. If I let myself cry, I knew I would fall apart and not be any good to my child or myself. So I swallowed hard, grabbed my bag, and walked to my supervisor's office. I told her there was a family emergency and I had to leave. She took one look at my face and didn't ask any questions. The drive to the police station in downtown Atlanta felt both too long and too short. Traffic crawled, horns honked, and the city moved like it always does, not caring that my life had just been split open. I kept one hand tight on the wheel and the other pressed against my chest, trying to hold myself together. I wanted to turn the car around, go home, and shake Darius until he admitted everything. But another part of me knew that confronting him alone would be the worst mistake I could make. Inside the station, the air smelled like old coffee and paper. There were people waiting on hard chairs, officers walking back and forth, phones ringing. I walked up to the front desk and heard my own voice say, "I need to talk to someone about a murder plan." The man behind the desk blinked, then asked me to repeat myself. I did, a little louder this time, fighting the urge to run. They took me to a small room with gray walls and a metal table. After a few minutes, a man in a dark suit came in and sat across from me. He had tired eyes but a calm voice. "I'm Detective Eric Barnes," he said, holding out his hand. "This is Officer Miguel Lopez." A younger officer in uniform stepped in and sat beside him. "Tell us what's going on, Miss Carter." I told them everything. I started with the life insurance policy for $900,000. The house, the way Darius had been acting, his questions about money. Then I told them about my fear of water, how he knew every detail. I told them about the phone call from Maya, about Lena, about the plan for the lake and the move to the coast. My voice shook at times, but I kept going. I needed them to hear every piece. Detective Barnes leaned forward, his hands folded on the table. "If what you're saying is true, this is a plan to commit murder for money," he said slowly. "Do you know when he wants to take you to the lake?" "This weekend," I said. My hands were trembling in my lap. "He thinks I don't know. Last night he told me he wanted to have a romantic day alone at Lake Cedarwood, a couple hours from here. He said it would be good for us." Officer Lopez glanced at Barnes. "We can set up at the lake," he said. "Plainclothes officers, unmarked cars, maybe even a boat positioned nearby. But we need her to go along with the plan." I stared at them. "You want me to pretend I don't know they're trying to kill me?" I asked. It sounded insane when I said it out loud. Barnes nodded, his gaze steady. "If we move too soon, he can say it was just talk, just a bad joke. But if we let him go through with the attempt, and we catch him watching you struggle in the water, doing nothing, laughing with this woman, then we have strong evidence. We will be there. We will not let you die. But we need you to act like everything is normal." I thought about Maya sitting in Miss Gloria's living room, scared and waiting for me. I thought about Darius smiling at me that very morning, asking what size life jacket I wore, making it sound like a thoughtful detail. I felt anger rising through my fear, hot and sharp. "I'll do it," I said finally. My voice surprised me by how firm it sounded. "But you better not let him win. I have a daughter who needs me alive." Barnes slid a small card across the table. "You won't be alone, Naomi," he said. "We'll wire your car with audio before you leave for the lake. We'll have cameras at the dock and officers stationed where they can see everything. You'll wear a bracelet that has a tracker inside. When you get on that boat, we'll already have a team nearby in the water. If anything goes wrong, we move in." As he spoke, the plan started to take shape in my mind. It felt like something out of a crime show on television, not my real life, but it was my life. My husband and his lover had turned me into a number on a check. I could not change that. What I could change was how the story ended. When I walked out of that police station, the sky over Atlanta looked the same as it had that morning, a dull, pale blue with thin clouds. Cars still moved, people still crossed the street with coffee cups in their hands. But inside me, something had shifted. I was no longer just a wife ignoring little signs. I was a woman who had looked at the truth, as ugly as it was, and decided to fight back. I was not going to let Darius and Lena cash me in like a policy. They had set their trap. Now, with the police beside me, I was going to walk into it with my eyes wide open. Saturday came faster than I wanted it to. All week I had been living in two different worlds at once. On the outside, I smiled at Darius, cooked dinner, and nodded when he talked about how nice and quiet the lake would be. On the inside, I was counting down to the day my own husband planned to kill me, and the police planned to catch him trying. The only thing that kept me standing was knowing that Maya was safe. The night before, my cousin Danielle had driven down from Nashville, Tennessee, and taken Maya back with her. The police had spoken with Danielle, explained enough to make her understand this was serious, and promised to keep her updated. When I hugged my daughter goodbye, I held her so tight she squirmed and laughed, not knowing that hug might have been my last if we had done nothing. That Saturday morning, the sky over Atlanta was clear and bright, the kind of day people post pictures of online with little captions about blessings and fresh starts. Darius acted like that was exactly what we were getting. He moved around the kitchen whistling, packing sandwiches and bottled water into a cooler. "You ready for our big day, babe?" he asked, tossing the cooler into the back of his truck like we were headed for a simple date. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile onto my face. "I'm excited." The word tasted bitter, but I said it anyway. I had to make him believe I knew nothing. Around my wrist was the bracelet the police had given me. It looked like a simple silver band, something a husband might buy his wife for an anniversary, but inside was a tracker and a tiny microphone. The night before, officers had come to my house in an unmarked car. They sat at my kitchen table, tested the bracelet, and checked the recorder they had hidden in my car. "If you get scared, keep breathing," Officer Lopez had told me. "Just follow the plan. We'll be there." Now, as the metal of the bracelet warmed against my skin, I thought of his words and tried to let them hold me up. We drove out of the city, passing old brick buildings and gas stations, then stretches of highway with trees on both sides. I stared out the window, pretending to enjoy the view. Every few minutes I checked the side mirror. A plain gray sedan stayed a few vehicles behind us, never too close, never too far. I knew that was the police. Somewhere farther back, a dark blue SUV was part of the team too. To anyone else, they looked like strangers on the road. To me, they were the thin line between life and death. As we drove past the area near Macon, Georgia, Darius reached over and rested his hand on my knee. "You know," he said, sounding casual, "I'm really glad we're doing this. Feels like we've been off lately. We need time alone." I swallowed a laugh that wanted to come out sharp and mean. Instead, I said, "Yeah, it'll be good for us." In my head, I added, "Good for me at least. It'll show me who you really are." After about 2 hours, the road curved around a cluster of pines and opened up to Lake Cedarwood. It was wide and dark, the water almost black in some places. Even from the truck, I could tell it was deep. The sight of it made my chest tighten and my palms go slick. I had to remind myself to breathe. Darius pulled into a gravel parking lot near the dock. There were a few other cars there, but it wasn't crowded. A small wooden office sat near the shore with a faded sign about boat rentals. "This is nice, right?" he said, grinning. "Quiet, private." "Yeah," I said again, unclipping my seatbelt with hands that did not feel like they belonged to me. We walked toward the dock. The boards creaked under our feet. A man in a navy shirt with a name tag that read Tyrell James stepped out of the rental office. He had a calm look on his face as he greeted us. "Morning," he said. "You two here for a boat?" "Yeah, just a small motorboat," Darius said, pulling out his wallet. He didn't even glance my way. While they spoke, my eyes swept the shore. A couple stood near the water, looking like tourists, the man pretending to take pictures of the lake with a camera. A woman in a floppy hat sat at a picnic table, flipping through a magazine. A man in fishing gear leaned on the rail with a tackle box beside him. They all looked normal, but I knew some of them were undercover officers. Detective Barnes had told me they would position people where they could see everything. Then I saw her, Lena. She stood near a tree a little farther down the shore, wearing big dark sunglasses and a bright red top that hurt my eyes in the sunlight. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, and she had a small purse slung over one arm. She waved at Darius like she was greeting her man after a long trip. "What is she doing here?" I asked, letting a little anger rise into my voice. I needed to sound like a wife who suspected an affair, not a woman who knew her husband was plotting murder. Darius' smile faltered for a moment. "Oh, she just wanted to say hi before we go out," he said quickly. "You know, make peace. She feels bad about how things looked the other day, right?" I said slowly. Inside, the words I wanted to say were a lot harsher. "You really think I'm that stupid?" He helped me into the boat, acting like a gentleman. The irony made my stomach twist. Tyrell, the clerk, steadied the boat as I stepped in. For a split second, his eyes met mine. There was something steady and serious in his gaze, like he wanted to tell me without words that he knew, that he was ready. Darius climbed in after me and moved to the back of the boat. He fiddled with the motor, checking something I could not see. "I'll drive you out to the middle," he said. "Then you can try to float. I'll stay close. We'll take it slow." I sat on the narrow bench, trying not to shake. The water slapped against the sides of the boat as we moved away from the dock. Each little wave sounded louder than it should, echoing inside my chest. The shore began to pull back, the people shrinking into small shapes. I could still see the couple with the camera, the fisherman, the woman in the floppy hat. I knew at least some of them were watching me through different eyes than Darius was. As we went farther out, the lake opened up around us. The air felt colder above the deeper water. I tried to focus on my breathing, counting silently. 1, 2, 3 in. 1, 2, 3 out. The bracelet on my wrist felt heavy, like it was carrying all my hope. "Okay, this is perfect," Darius said after a while, cutting back the engine. The boat slowed to a gentle drift. The shore looked small and distant. "Why don't you stand up?" he said. "I'll help you ease into the water." I stood slowly, my legs weak. The boat rocked under my weight, and I grabbed the side for balance. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. "I'm scared," I said, and that part wasn't an act. He gave me a soft look that would have fooled anyone who didn't know better. "Trust me," he said. "I got you." I took a step toward the edge. At that moment, I felt the boat shudder. The engine coughed once, twice, and then died completely. The boat dipped slightly. Water started to seep in near the back, not fast but steady. "Darius, what did you do?" I asked, my voice shaking. "It's fine," he said too fast. "Sometimes these old motors act up. Just get in the water. It'll be fun. Go on." I knew then, with a cold clarity, that this was the moment he had been planning for. The boat would slowly take on water, leaving me out here in the deep. If I went under, he could tell everyone it happened so fast he couldn't save me. Then he and Lena would collect the $900,000 from the policy, sell my house maybe for $400,000 or more, and start their new life. I remembered Maya's words about them talking of moving to the coast, maybe buying some condo in Miami, Florida for around $500,000 and hiding the rest away. I let one foot touch the water. It was freezing against my skin, shocking and sharp. My breath hitched in my throat. For a second, I almost forgot about the police, the bracelet, all of it. All I could feel was the old panic from childhood, the memory of sinking in that pool in Ohio. Then I heard it, laughter from the shore. I turned my head. Darius had taken a step back from me and was looking past the boat, toward land. There, near the tree, was Lena. Even from this distance, I could see her hand over her mouth, her shoulders shaking. She was laughing. Darius grinned back at her, his face relaxed in a way it hadn't been around me in a long time. They were watching me like I was some show they had paid for, like this was a scene they had rehearsed in their heads until it felt real. That was when everything changed. From behind a cluster of trees, 4 officers stepped out at once. They moved fast, guns drawn, but pointed down. The quiet morning air, filled with sharp commands. Another small boat that I had thought was just a fishing boat, suddenly roared to life and turned toward us, cutting across the water with a spray of foam. Darius Bennett, a voice shouted through a loudspeaker. Step away from her and put your hands where we can see them. Darius spun around, his eyes wide and wild. What the Naomi? What did you do? He yelled, as if I were the one who had broken some sacred promise. I didn't answer him. I didn't have to. The police boat pulled up alongside us, bumping gently against our side. 2 officers reached out, their hands firm and sure. Ma'am, we've got you, one of them said. I grabbed the side of their boat so hard my knuckles went white. They hauled me in, their arms strong and solid. Water sloshed in my shoes as my feet left the bottom of our boat. I collapsed onto the floor of the police boat, my whole body shaking. For a moment, all I could do was curl in on myself and sob, the sound torn from a place so deep inside me I didn't know it had a voice. On the shore, chaos broke out. Lena turned and tried to run, her red top flashing like a warning light. Before she got more than a few steps, a woman in jeans and a plain jacket, the one I thought was just a person with a magazine, moved fast. She grabbed Lena from behind and forced her down into the sand. I later learned her name was Rachel King, another officer working the case. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and attempted homicide, Detective Barnes shouted as he climbed into the half-flooded boat with Darius. His voice carried clear across the water. We have recordings of your plan, your laughter while she struggled, and your talks about the money. It's over. Darius looked at me from our sinking boat, his face twisted with anger and something that almost looked like fear. His hands were already behind his back as Barnes snapped the cuffs on. You set me up, he spat. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. My voice came out hoarse but steady. No, I said. You set yourself up. I just refused to die for your payout. As the officers led Darius away and others dragged the boat back toward the dock, I sat on the floor of the police boat and stared at the dark water. My body was shaking, but I was alive. The trap they had planned for me had closed around them instead. For the first time in a long time, I felt like the story of my life might finally belong to me again. The trial felt like it lasted a lifetime. Months passed in a blur of court dates, meetings with lawyers, and long drives from Atlanta to the courthouse in Savannah. Every time I walked through those big glass doors, I felt small, like I was stepping into a place where my whole life was on display. People whispered when they recognized me. Some looked at me with pity, some with curiosity, like they were staring at a headline instead of a woman. I kept my head up for one reason only. I needed justice, not just for me, but for my daughter. Inside the courtroom, I always sat right behind the prosecutor. I wanted Darius and Lena to feel my presence at their backs. I wanted them to know that I was still here, still breathing, still fighting. The first time I saw them in their jail clothes, I felt a strange mix of anger and sadness. This was the man I once loved, the man I trusted with my heart and my house and my future. And now he sat there in chains, eyes flat, like a stranger. Lena sat beside him, her hair pulled back, her face pale without all the makeup. They looked smaller than they used to, but their choices were still huge in my life. The day they played the recordings in court, the whole room changed. Detective Barnes had warned me it would be hard to listen to, but I was not ready for how it would hit me. The audio played through the speakers, and there it was, Darius' voice, calm and cold. Once the policy pays out and we sell the house, we'll have at least $1,300,000. We'll be set for life. Hearing him say it out loud, with that easy tone, made my stomach twist. To him, my death was not a tragedy. It was a payday. Then Lena's voice followed, light and casual. She's scared of water anyway. No one will question it. She laughed in the recording, and that laugh echoed across the courtroom. I saw people in the jury box shift in their seats. One woman pressed her lips together so tight they turned white. Another man shook his head slowly, like he could not believe what he was hearing. Those 12 strangers were finally stepping into the nightmare I had been living in silence. When it was my turn to speak, I walked up to the witness stand on legs that felt like they were made of stone. I raised my right hand, swore to tell the truth, and then sat down, facing the room. The prosecutor asked me questions, but after a while, the words just started to pour out of me. I talked about my house in Atlanta, how hard I had worked at the clinic to afford the payments. I talked about my fear of water, how Darius had held me and promised I would always be safe with him. I talked about my daughter, about how Maya's small shaking voice on the phone had saved my life. Most of all, I talked about trust. I told them how I had trusted Darius with everything, my body, my heart, my future, and how he decided my life had a price tag. I told them what it felt like to look back at the shore that day at Lake Cedarwood and see my own husband laughing while I fought the water. I did not cry while I spoke. I thought I would, but the tears had dried up into something sharper, a kind of calm fire. I wanted them to see I was not just a victim. I was a survivor sitting there, telling them exactly what had been done to me. In the end, the jury went out to deliberate. Those hours felt like days. I sat in a small waiting room with my lawyer, my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee I barely touched. When the clerk finally called us back in, my heart felt like it was trying to climb out of my chest. We all stood as the jury filed in. Their faces were serious, unreadable. The foreman stood up and read the verdicts, guilty on all major charges for both Darius and Lena. My knees almost gave out, but I locked them in place. When the judge read the sentences, I listened closely but felt strangely distant. Decades in prison for Darius. A long sentence for Lena too. People always talk about justice bringing joy, but all I felt in that moment was a heavy door closing somewhere inside me. It was not happiness. It was not relief. It was more like finally knowing where the pain belonged. It belonged on them, not on me. They had chosen money over my life, and now they would pay with their freedom. After the trial, the life insurance company canceled the policy because I was alive, and honestly, that was fine with me. I did not want a single dollar that came from the idea of my death. Instead, I turned my attention to the life I still had. With help from a good real estate agent, I put the house in Atlanta on the market. It sold for $410,000. After paying off the rest of the mortgage, the lawyers, and the old bills that had piled up, I walked away with around $120,000. It was not a fortune, but to me it felt like seed money for a new beginning. I decided I needed distance from the memories stamped into every corner of that house and that city. I chose Portland, Oregon, almost on instinct. I wanted a place still in America, but far enough that the streets did not hold ghosts of who I had been with Darius. Maya and I moved into a small townhouse on a quiet street. It had a blue front door, 2 bedrooms, and a tiny garden in the back where someone had once planted herbs and roses. The rent was $1,200 a month, which felt steep, but I wrote that check with a strange sort of pride. I was paying for a life that was finally mine. At night, after Maya fell asleep, I would sit at the kitchen table with a notebook and a cheap calculator. I listed our bills one by one: $1,200 for rent, around $300 for food, $90 for the phone, $60 for internet, a little set aside each month for clothes and emergencies. Sometimes the numbers made me nervous, but they also made me feel grounded. For the first time in a long time, I was not wondering what bill Darius had secretly skipped or what lie he had told about our money. Every dollar going in and out was something I knew about. As time passed, people kept reaching out about my story. Journalists called, some from other states in America. A few wanted to pay me for interviews. At first, I said no to almost all of them. I was too tired, too broken to keep reopening the wound. But slowly, after talking with a counselor and praying on it, I started saying yes to a few. I did a local show in Portland, then later spoke at a women's group meeting in Denver, Colorado. They paid small fees, $500 here, $800 there. It was not just about the money. It was about using my voice. One reporter, a woman with kind eyes, told me once, "You know that $900,000 policy is close to £700,000 in pounds?" She said it like it was a shocking fact. I sat there for a second, thinking about it. Then I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "My life isn't equal to any number. Not in dollars. Not in pounds. My life is priceless. That's the whole point." She went quiet and nodded, and in that moment, I felt the power of saying it out loud. Maya grew older and stronger with every passing year. We did not hide what had happened, but we did talk about it in words she could handle. I told her the truth. Her honesty had saved my life, and that was something to be proud of. Sometimes she still woke up from bad dreams, crying, saying she saw her daddy by the water. On those nights, I held her until she settled and told her again that she had done the bravest thing a child could do. We faced the pain together instead of pretending it did not exist. One bright afternoon, We were walking near the river in Portland, holding hands. The water moved slowly, sparkling in the sun. Maya looked up at me with those big eyes that carry too much history for someone her age. "Mama, do you still hate the water?" she asked. I stopped and watched the river for a moment. The old fear was still there, sitting quietly in my chest like a stone. "I'm still scared," I said honestly, "but I'm not running from it anymore. I won't let fear, or what they tried to do to us, decide my whole life." She smiled a little. "Maybe one day we can go on a big trip," she said. "Maybe see another place. You always said you wanted to see London." Her words warmed something inside me. "Yeah," I said, smiling back. "Maybe one day we'll save up and take a trip to London and Europe. We'll see the big clock, eat too much good food, and buy silly souvenirs. But no lakes," I added, and she laughed, the sound bright and free. Now, when I tell my story, I know I am not just talking about a crime. I am talking about a woman who learned the hard way that love without respect is not love at all. I am talking about a little girl who listened when adults thought she was too small to matter and picked up the phone anyway. I am talking about how a house, a policy, and a price tag almost became my grave, but did not. There are still nights when I wake up hearing echoes of that awful laughter from the shore at Lake Cedarwood. For a moment, my heart races and my mind goes back to that sinking boat. But then I hear something louder, my own voice, steady and clear, telling this story in my own words, and Maya's voice calling, "Mama," from down the hall. Those sounds remind me of the truth. I am still here. I kept my life, and no one, not ever again, will get to decide my worth in dollars or pounds. That is something I will teach my daughter, and she will carry it into a future that belongs to her.